U.S. President Frito-Lay Donald Trump kidnapped and smuggled back to America current sitting Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife Cecilia Flores after rocking Venezuelan capital of Caracas with bombs. At least they didn't end him yet, like they did some Gaddafi in Libya. Earlier this AM, Saturday, January 3rd, 2026, around 2 a.m., shortly after a series of explosive bombs shook Venezuela's capital, the U.S. announced that Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Cecilia Flores, have been captured and taken into U.S. custody. What a way to start the year, right? Residents across the Venezuelan capital, Caracas, reported the night sky being lit up with loud blasts, flashing lights, and low-flying aircrafts.
We didn't think a full-blown out land attack would come about, even though it was part of Donald Trump's threat for the past few months. But that's what nobody wanted, actually. This come about in the worst way possible, which is an attack on Caracas, as what we're seeing right now.
Quickly followed by smoke rising over the city and power outages ravaging local neighborhoods. Now let's keep it real. Now, since becoming the president in 2013, about 7.7 million Venezuelans have fled the country on civil unrest, not being able to pay for clothes, shelter, food, not being able to live, really. And since he was captured, Venezuelans are now applauding. They're now happy that their country is finally able to breathe, finally able to be free, is what they're saying. Let's keep it a buck. Let's not get it twisted, because guess what country turned them away when they needed it the most? America. At first, they were welcomed here. Many Venezuelans were branded as criminals and forced to leave the country. They were forced to seek an asylum elsewhere outside the country. They were banned from America. But why Venezuela? Why now?
Maduro administration has not, stepped down from office after years of not being recognized as leader in Venezuela.
Now, you just mentioned about Maduro has not stepped down, but the U.S. administration always insists that this is about fighting drug trafficking. So,
well, the real reasons for this escalation has been regime change. And even though Trump has hinted at it, he has not said it flat out. But what has always been behind the military deployment in the Caribbean has been about regime change in Venezuela. Even since Donald Trump's first time in office, this was part of a plan to oust Maduro from government, because it is a destabilizing fixture in the region. And we've seen that that has prompted a mass migration of Venezuelans that has affected the entire hemisphere.
Do the majority in Venezuela see the U.S. attacks, the U.S. moves, do they see this as a kind of liberation or really as an attack against them? And could this even cause a kind of backlash?
Well, the majority of Venezuelan people voted last year against Nicolás Maduro, and the Maduro administration still went ahead and declared victory, even though we proved that the opposition had won. So the majority had already stated what they wish for Venezuela's government to be like. Now, if this is the right way of achieving that or of bringing about change, well, many people don't know.
According to U.S. sources, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and wife Cecilia Flores were captured and expedited to U.S. soil on charges of drug trafficking, which is some BS if I ever heard it. America will sit here and do the same thing. They want to be the only ones to, better yet, run drugs up and down its own coast. But as soon as somebody else does it, then it's an issue. It's like America saying, I want to be the only one that can move drugs throughout my country, which I guess makes sense. It's your country, so you do what you want in your country, right? But the fact of the matter is that you're peddling drugs in a country, your own country, against your own U.S. citizens, harmful substances, mind-altering substances, then you're going to peddle it and traffic it through the Black community and through ethnic communities, and then turn around and throw those same people in jail who you use to push your drugs. within your own country just so you can make a few extra more dollars that you already print? And then you turn around and do the same thing, capture other presidents in other countries on the same charges of doing what you do to your own people? Yeah, America, you gotta chill. We know about you. Just some BS if I ever heard any. And how do we know that? Because America is doing what America always does: subjugate a foreign nation rising to power, claim a matter of national security, invade, take out political figures, and assume control, all in efforts to take over power, land, and resources: oil, gold, metal, other elements, ancient artifacts. If you know, you know. Iraq, Iran. But let's get back into it. So Trump has gone ahead and stated that the United States would manage Venezuela temporarily until a safe and proper transition is achieved. So our country, the U.S., stated long-standing allegations of narcotics being trafficked by Venezuela, or better yet, being trafficked by the Maduro government as justification for airstrikes and capturing their president. As if America isn't already indulged in these same allegations. Feds trafficking cocaine and fentanyl through America, black community as scapegoats, then turning around and imprisoning the same people that you use to peddle your drugs. However, with all that being said, public reactions were mixed. While some Venezuelans were up in arms in protests.
Estamos, el pueblo en la calle indignado, molesto. Aquí estamos, no nos vamos a retirar de la calle hasta que sepamos de nuestro presidente Nicolás Maduro Moro. Nuestra vicepresidenta pidió una fe de vida. Nosotros estamos en la calle pidiendo la fe de vida, que nos devuelvan a nuestro presidente, que lo han secuestrado.
Others living outside the country, like in Doral, Florida, were gathered in support of the removal of Maduro.
I went online and I was like looking at all the news, and I was just like with like the feeling of I want to cry, but also I'm happy. I'm hoping for peace of all.
Let's take a step back and be clear about what this means. Sitting sovereign was removed from office by an outside power. There was no prior UN approval for this maneuver. And America considers the Western Hemisphere as its backyard, stating that they hold all power and final say-so on what goes on this side of the globe. This was direct in the open military action against a sovereign nation and the removal of its sitting president without prior UN approval. Now that alone sends shockwaves through global politics. I mean, maybe not anymore since we all know Trump does what he wants. But to understand why the US would do this, we need to talk about what some people think is ancient history. For the last 200 years, starting in 1823, the United Nations introduced the Monroe Doctrine. In simple terms, it said this: Europe, stay out of the Western Hemisphere, the Americas, and in return, the US will not interfere in what you have going on in your countries. But this changed over time. The message soon became, the Western Hemisphere is ours, and we decide what happens here. Effectively, the US sees the entirety of the Americas as its backyard, in which it has all power and final law of the land. Basically saying, we're the big kid on the playground. And that idea never dissolved. It just stopped being spoken out loud until now. But let's be clear, Venezuela is not threatening American military. It threatens something America cares about way more: power, influence, control. First, oil. Venezuela holds some of the largest oil reserves on earth. So not just fuel, it holds leverage. Secondly, its alliances. Venezuela openly aligns itself with Russia, China, and Iran, directly going against the Monroe Doctrine, stating that the Eastern Hemisphere should have no play in Western politics. And by doing so, Venezuela has effectively given Eastern powers, U.S. rivals, footholds in its own backyard, Latin America. And third, its defiance. Under Chavez and then now Maduro, Venezuela has rejected U.S. political and economic pressure and has been encouraging other countries within the region to do the same. Reject U.S. political control. So let's run this list. The largest potential oil reserves on Earth, aligns itself with Russia, China, and Iran, rejects U.S. influence, became a symbol of resistance in the Western Hemisphere, and sought to break U.S. regional dominance. From the U.S. perspective, that's not just a hostile government. That's a bad example set for the rest of the globe. Now, if this all seems familiar, that's because we've been here before. In 2011, NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, a group of 32 aligned countries, decided to invade, capture, and remove Libyan leader Gaddafi from his seat of power. Why? Because Gaddafi was building alternative systems to rival the US dollar in its political power. A gold-backed African currency, a centralized African banking system, African financial independence, and freedom from Western powers. So you know America wasn't having that. They removed him from power, assassinated him, and then Libya fell into chaos. As he was fleeing war in his convoy, NATO struck his vehicle, allowing him to be subject to rebel fighting forces. After he was removed, Libya fell into chaos. Militias, civil war, human trafficking, and no strong central state. The message was clear. Challenge the system, and the system responds. But let's talk about this. Venezuela isn't waters away. It's right here in the Monroe Doctrine's home turf, America's backyard. This wasn't done quietly. It wasn't done through proxies. It wasn't done with an intentional coven. It was public. It was direct. Now, the violence in Caracas didn't emerge in isolation. For months, the U.S. had been conducting maritime strikes against suspected drug smuggling ships in the Caribbean Pacific. Reports state that at least 35 boat strikes and over 100 deaths have been confirmed leading up to this January. Now, before he was captured, or let's say before the invasion and capture of Maduro, Maduro had repeatedly called on Trump to engage in legitimate negotiations on drug trafficking and oil. But you know, the majority of Venezuelans are happy for this. Happy that their dictator, from what I've read so far, has been taken out of power.
For Venezuelans, this is the most freedom they've had since Maduro came into power back in 2013.
Yeah, come celebrate with us. We love everybody because you, America, has loved us so much. So much. Thank you, America.
All I'm saying is, I know America has undercover motives. They didn't do this for the people. As you can see, America's just saying they did it for themselves. They want to stop drug trafficking. But there's always mention of oil in this whole maneuver. Everything that played out, there's always a mention of oil. So we all know the truth. America just wants to get their hands on power, on oil, on some ancient artifacts if they can, while being disguised this time as doing something for the people in their backyard. And I'm not saying it's bad or good, you feel me? I'm just saying it is what it is. So you let me know how you feel in the comments and let's discuss. After all this, let's see if, Venezuela is really gonna do all right with America being in control for the time being. Let's see if they actually help Venezuela, or if it goes down the same road as Libya and a couple other countries that we helped liberate from their dictators, you feel me? To see if it falls into despair and chaos, or if it comes out on the better side. I'ma hope that for the goodness of people that it comes out on the good side, on the better side, the side looking up. But let's see what actually happens, you heard?